Welcome to Green Iowa AmeriCorps' virtual summer camp. My name is Megan. This week's topic is climate change. Did you know that climate change can impact your health? In this presentation, you will learn about the health-related impacts of climate change. Some areas will experience new climate-related health threats. For example, an area that had not been affected by toxic algae blooms or water-borne illnesses are likely to be affected by these threats in the future because of increased temperatures that promote these organisms to thrive. Climate change can affect human health by increasing the severity or frequency of health issues that are already tied to climate or weather. It is likely that climate change will not only exacerbate health issues, but may also accentuate health issues related to socioeconomic status or slow improvement there. This diagram illustrates how climate drivers lead to exposure pathways, which affect our health. Exposure pathways differ over time and in different places. They can affect different people and communities to varying degrees. Exposure to multiple threats can occur to an individual or community. The exposure pathways are influenced by other key factors shown in the gray boxes. The environmental, institutional, social, and behavioral factors all influence vulnerability of an individual or community by changing their rate of exposure, their sensitivity, and their ability to adapt. So, before we get into the health effects of climate change, we need to talk about vulnerability. Everyone will be affected by climate change in one way or the other. However, vulnerability will determine the extent of which you are infected. Vulnerability is determined by exposure, sensitivity, and the capacity to adapt or cope. Some people and communities will be affected by climate change more than others. This image depicts social determinants of health. Some vulnerable populations include the armed forces, people with disabilities, children, older adults, pregnant women, those with low income, immigrant groups, people with pre-existing or chronic medical conditions, communities of color, Native Americans, certain occupational groups such as people who work outside, and those with limited English proficiency within the United States. These populations are at an increased risk of exposure given their likelihood of living in risk-prone areas. Many of these groups also have an increased incidence of chronic medical conditions, which climate change can exacerbate. Some of the pre-existing health conditions that will be exacerbated by climate change include Alzheimer's, asthma, COPD, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, mental illness, obesity, and people with disabilities. This image depicts the impact of climate change on our health. In the middle, there are effects of climate change. In the outer ring, it shows the consequences of those effects, and beyond the circle, the image lists the possible health issues related to those consequences. Changes in temperature will have a direct impact on human health. Temperature extremes reduce the human body's ability to regulate its temperature, which will cause illness, including heat cramps, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, hyperthermia, hypothermia, and frostbite. Chronic conditions could be worsened because of extreme temperatures. These conditions include cardiovascular, respiratory, or renal illnesses, mental health issues, preterm births, and more. Climate change will affect air quality both inside and outside. Outdoor pollutants such as ground-level ozone, fine particulate matter, and carbon dioxide will increase with climate change. These pollutants also help plants grow, which will increase allergens. The pollutants and allergens infiltrate in buildings, which will degrade air quality within homes, schools, offices, and other buildings. Climate change will affect wind, precipitation, humidity, cloudiness, and temperature. All of these things affect air quality. Health implications from air quality include aggravated cardiovascular and respiratory illnesses, asthma, and increased allergy-related illnesses. Allergens will increase because climate change will increase their season and make it even more severe. and pollen will move to new areas. It is likely that not only will seasonal allergies and asthma worsen, but people who had not previously had seasonal allergies will develop them. Once allergens are inhaled, they can stimulate an allergic response in vulnerable or sensitive people. Whether an allergic disease develops depends on several factors, including the immune system, environmental exposures, socioeconomic status, and demographic factors. Allergens can contribute to several health issues, including asthma episodes, hay fever, hives, and eczema. Vectors such as mosquitoes, ticks, and fleas carry certain diseases, which are referred to as vector-borne diseases or illnesses. Some of these diseases include Lyme disease, West Nile virus, malaria, dengue fever, and the Black Plague. Infected vectors carry the disease, which can transfer from one carrier to another. Climate change will likely increase the geographic range of vectors, and they'll spread outward and upward to new areas where they were previously not found. Our exposure to waterborne illnesses are likely to increase due to climate change. These illnesses are caused by pathogens and toxins, which will thrive in warmer temperatures. Climate change will also increase precipitation, which will affect pathogens' growth, spread, and toxicity. Exposure of these pathogens can be through ingestion of infected water, inhalation, consuming fish, or coming in contact with infected water by accident or through recreation. Some health issues related to waterborne illnesses include flu-like symptoms, neurological issues, respiratory issues, paralysis, infections, meningitis, septicemia, infection of organs, and liver or kidney damage. Food-borne illnesses occur when somebody eats contaminated food. Climate change will raise the chance for food-borne illnesses to occur. Higher temperatures increase the likelihood of spoilage and contamination, and the number of pathogens already in seafood will likely rise. And the increased precipitation can also increase the likelihood that food will be contaminated by chemicals and other toxins during development. Frequency, intensity, and geographic distribution of extreme events will be altered by climate change, which will increase health risks related to extreme events. Drowning, mental health impacts, carbon monoxide poisoning, respiratory impacts, reduced water and air quality, smoke inhalation, asthma exacerbation, hypothermia, and frostbite are all some of the examples of the health effects related to extreme events. I hope you learned a lot in this presentation on climate change and health. I barely touched the surface of the health effects related to climate change in our health. If you would like to learn more, there are links to videos, articles, and the sources I used to make this presentation in the lesson packet on the Green Iowa AmeriCorps website. Thank you for participating in our first ever virtual summer camp.